All right, good morning, everyone. I want to get us going because I know that, time is valuable, especially during this time of the summer, just before the start of the semester. I wanted to begin by again thanking everyone for one, your commitment and all the work that's been happening on every end. I mean, I think everyone's been super active in getting us going with preparations um, for our fall return and for just about anything and everything that we've been doing since the start of COVID. There were a couple of things that I wanted to cover today, primarily because we've had quite a few announcements that were critical for us as a college, but also as a general update to where we are and what we can do as we continue to roll out for the fall. Um, Earlier this week, there were two major announcements that I want to recall briefly. The first one, of course, came from President Lasner. And in that message, we're basically suggesting that given the current state of affairs here in Hawaii, with the increased number of cases that we are experiencing on a day-to-day, we want to be able to plan with a little bit more of a rollback to what we were planning to do originally. And so if you've been following our dialogue from the very onset of COVID, we've been basically going from, a slow return to everything online, to pause, most campus operations, to slowly rolling back to an open state, to a new normal for the fall return. And as of Monday, UH has announced that we want to, reverse a little bit because we want to reduce the potential of exposure on campus and spread of the virus. I think that the narrative has changed since we've opened up a little bit the state, where we were going from flattening the curve. I haven't heard that recently, but we were flattening the curve. We were doing relatively well. We opened up in some capacity. And as you could see in the chat box today, we're reporting 202 cases. And with that, of course, the death toll is also something that we've been monitoring. And so the university has taken the position that we want to just reduce the volume of folks that we will have on campus even more than we had originally intended. For this reason, I wanted to just offer a little bit more dialogue on this topic. I think that on the academic side, it's going to remain very important that you address concerns and questions with your coordinators, division chairs, and deans as we move forward. If you are moving some classes from whatever capacity, whether it's face-to-face or hybrid to online and whatever, any of these changes, because the challenge that we are facing being so close to the start of the semester is mitigating all of these changes in a way in which it doesn't toss our students and ourselves into a spin, and we want to control it as best as we can. Again, not to say that we're back to where we were post spring break, where we basically said everything goes online. What we're trying to do here is just control further the foot traffic here, not just because of what may be happening in the classrooms, but also the types of services that we would need to maintain open in some capacity because of the volume of folks that we will have on campus. So we just want to control that to the best of our abilities. I wanted to reinforce something that we haven't been saying often enough, and that is that COVID is real. I mean, it's hitting with greater frequencies. It's likely that earlier in the process, many of us didn't know of folks that may have been COVID positive or dealing with some conditions. Now we're most likely to know people that are going through it. And so it's becoming very real. And we just want to be respectful to our immediate ohana here at Leeward, as well as our ohanas at home. It's important that we realize that it's not just us that we are protecting. We're protecting those that we're interacting with. And I call it an evolution. I want to say that earlier on, we began having meetings without masks. Just having social distancing seems sufficient. And now we're moving into a situation where wherever we are social distancing, we're still, putting on our masks just because we want to be respectful. Earlier this week, we announced that we had our first COVID positive case on campus. It was, news that we don't like delivering, but news that we feel that it is our responsibility to deliver so that we are all aware. Important to note about these situations is that wherever we are placed, whether we are in the university or any public setting, there is a great deal of red tape that goes through with making all of these announcements, as well as mitigating whatever we need to address when and if a case does bubble up. And I will share that we've been experiencing, not COVID positive cases, but we have been experiencing potentials, and those we've been addressing to the best of our abilities, while creating the protocols and processes that are going to help us manage, fall and beyond. And so I will say that our processes are not perfect, and that we are learning, and that the most challenging thing that we could typically do is develop plans while we are, dealing with the challenges. It's easier to plan ahead. I mean, if we could strategically plan for the future, that would be wonderful. But here we are really faced with challenges that are happening on a day-to-day. And I wanted to, recognize those of us that have been working to address these matters on a day-to-day, and everyone really for your understanding as we are trying to discern more of this. With the announcement that we sent out on Monday, we also sent out the link to our interim plan in alignment with the guidelines from UH. And so our plan is not meant to be exclusive. It's meant to be in alignment with the UH guidelines. And so we're following on those expectations. And I would hope that everyone, wherever possible, can review those materials. But on top of it, I do want to make comment to a couple of things that did come in as questions. So as typical, and I should have said this before, if you have questions, you could go ahead and put them in the chat. I'm not following them, but at some point I'll go through some of those. I have gotten some questions through the link that was sent out with yesterday's reminder. And in my remarks, I will be trying to address those questions as I push along. And so one of the questions is that within our guidelines or our interim plan, we are indicating that the University of Hawaii is going to be pushing out or rolling out a training video that I asked for an update, and it should be coming out later this week. Now, one of the advantages, so we have advantages and disadvantages of being part of a larger university system. The advantage is that we get to all, work with similar resources, leveraging resources. One of the disadvantages is that we do rely at times on working together as a system, and it just takes a little bit longer to get some of the gratification. But there is going to be a training video that helps us out both on the employee and on the student side on what the best practices and guideline expectations are that speak to, wearing of the facial coverings, that speak to the hygiene, that speak to the cleaning of, facilities. And so a lot of the details that are part of our plan and the guidelines are going to be part of that training video. And that should really put it, out there for all of us to have more awareness. On that note as well, there's another component within our plan, as well as the guidelines, that speak of a mobile app to check in daily. And so some of us actually, and I don't know if I should be saying this publicly, but some of us just went onto the app store and downloaded the app ahead of time, and we've been playing with it. And so the app will actually ask us to, the app will ask us to answer one question, and that one question really is a bunch of questions together that are asking whether we've had any symptoms or traveled recently or COVID positive. And if we say yes to any of those questions, the app will immediately tell us to not come to campus. In exchange, as a campus, we are going to get a report that basically tells us, these individuals have identified yes, and we will work on a follow-up mechanism to see how we could address some of the situations that we may be individually living with. It's, in my opinion, a hefty workload on the management of the outcomes of the app, but it's an opportunity for us to reflect before we come to campus. And I think that that's really important. If any of us are feeling any symptoms, and the symptoms continue to be added to the big list, but if we are feeling any of these symptoms, we want to be safe. And so please don't come to campus, connect with your immediate supervisor. And in just a little bit, I'm gonna show, I don't know if we're ready to share the slide. In any event, I'm going to point back to the interim guidelines or plan that we sent out earlier this week. Within it, you'll find the contact information. We have 2 avenues of communicating symptoms. Actually, we have multiple avenues. But for right now, for all practical purposes, if you're a student, we are going through our interim dean of students, and that's Kami Kato. If on the employee side, employees, vendors, or contractors, and there's a slide. It's Mark Lane. So there's an email that you could inform us whether you have symptoms or anything like that, as well as a phone number, just to let us know. Let us know whether you are having any of the symptoms or have been tested, so that we could then address thereafter. In the guidelines, we go into much more detail on what we are doing. The immediate actions are that we collect enough contact information so that we know who you are and how to get in contact with you. The next immediate action, hopefully you're not on campus, because all of this can be done remotely. But if you happen to be experiencing symptoms on campus, or if theoretically you're asymptomatic and get the results or something like that, connect with us so that you could go home or go seek medical health care. We will then follow up with the individuals that are reporting, because there is a limited questionnaire that we need to assess so that we know maybe where on campus you have been, who you may have been in contact with. Some of this is what the Department of Health is doing organically, but we are taking the extra precaution of following up ourselves, because we, rather be safe than sorry. And so with that information, we are asking, again, if you are feeling any symptoms, or even if someone in your household is feeling symptoms, connect with your supervisor, and then connect with either Cami or Mark, reporting the situation. We will follow up and create guidance. We will also have mechanisms to connect if you're on the student side with instructors. We ask that you connect anyways with your instructor, but all of this information we want to maintain to a minimum number of people, because we're trying to protect that privacy. And so when I said earlier red tape, there's a lot of privacy information that we want to control. We can't control if I as an individual want to self-report and tell the world, but as an entity, we can't in exchange tell the world that someone's tested positive. We could say that someone has, but we can't give out name or indicate in a way in which it could be, so someone can be identified. And so that's more or less a Mickey Mouse way of describing the process. We really just want to gather the information, ask folks to leave the campus, and then we do an assessment of whether we need to do the deep cleaning if there is a COVID positive case, and if we need to follow up with other individuals, we will follow up just to be on the safe side. And so I continue saying that COVID is real. The numbers did go up. We are hopeful. We are hopeful that with the new reclose down of some of the public spaces, that we could reduce it a little bit more. Some of the indicators, and again, we're all looking at different metrics, but one of the indicators that really glows is that we've gotten into that list where some states are not allowing folks from Hawaii to go to, and that just indicates that we've really exceeded in what would be typically a normal exposure level of COVID at the state level. The other indicator, you guys, which is I think really important, is the capacity that our hospitals are reporting. And so it's not just a matter of the COVID cases, because many could be asymptomatic, but when our hospitals reach a capacity, I think that we need to look a little bit more rigorously at what we are doing. And so as an institution, and I hope that as employees of this institution, that we can continue to promote the use of our masks and the social distancing, and that we try to, restrict our congregations wherever possible. And so everything that we've said so far in terms of sharing what our fall return plans look like and the guidelines and all of this, that more or less is still in place. All that we're asking at this point is that we reflect a little bit more and work with our immediate supervisors in areas where maybe some of the services that we wanted to have more fully operational on campus. We may create rotation schedules. We may have restricted hours on campus. We may do appointments so that we reduce the need to have a lot of our spaces with lots of people. And so I'm going to transition just a little bit because there's just so much to share. And I like to put it out there again for conversation, for dialogue and transparency. Last week at the BOR meeting, VP Calvert shared some of the budgetary situations that UH may be facing. I'm going to put a little asterisk and a symbol and a footnote indicating that this is very presumptive. This is very, we don't know until the state and the governor acts on what the budget really looks like. And it also depends greatly on whether the state is able to reopen for tourism, which is our bread and butter for the state. And so at the BOR meeting, VP Calvert shared a scenario where we are predicting, we don't know this for sure, that the state is going to probably reduce our current year budget by 16%. Again, the details on the why the 16%, some folks can understand a little bit more. I just see it as a number. And so that 16% in general funds has an impact on every UH entity. I want to share a little bit of ours, but in addition to that, we are projecting a reduction in tuition dollars, a reduction in the ballpark of 10%. Now, all of these numbers may or may not materialize, but in those projections, in looking at Leeward specific numbers, it can generate a $4 million gap between our revenues and our expenses. $4 million is a lot to make up, especially when we only have about $2 million in discretionary budget dollars. And so everything else is basically tied to salaries. This is a reality that we may need to face. The challenge may not really be in for this year. The challenge may be more felt next year and thereafter, depending on how long this drags for. The reason that I'm presenting this information is one, because it has been presented to the BOR, but more so because it allows us to have some awareness as we continue to move forward with the planning here at Leeward. As we come back and roll back into the fall, and next week we have convocation, so that's my pitch for convocation. As we roll back, we want to have some real intentional conversations on how Leeward can contribute toward addressing this revenue gap that we may be experiencing. And again, maybe, and we've been saying maybe since March. And I am sorry that that's where we are today, but I just want to be real that we need to brace ourselves for some really difficult times to come ahead. And so with those projections in mind, I'm tossing them out there, not necessarily for major conversations right now, but I do want us to have those in mind as we begin to have more intentional conversations with our rollback plans, as well as our short-term and long-term planning. And so all of this is tied to a lot of decisions that we will be and have been making along the way in trying to adjust, our expenditures. And so some of the $4 million that we may need to work on figuring out, some of it could come from our reserves, but understanding that our reserves are one-time monies, and if we spend them, and this lasts for 4, 5, 6, 7 years, we may not be able to do that, the longevity. In addition, that $4 million, we may be already making some headway by virtue of the higher freeze that we're experiencing and other cost savings that we've put in place. And so, there's a lot of variables. We will know more once we have a more solid number to play with. But some challenges are we are already well into August and well into this fiscal year, and we have not made the major reductions that may be necessary to help us out. And so we have less time to make up that difference once it materializes. There are some justifications and as to why the state is taking, so long to provide this information. And it is probably because the state is waiting to see if the federal government will carry out yet another wave of stimulus dollars that may be able to, offset some of this. At the end of the day, however, because of our reliance on tourism and the likelihood of a potential recession that we may be waltzing into, our reliance on tourism is going to be an issue that's going to drag for a while. But we still have a place here, and like I will share, spoilers alert a little bit, but like I will share during convocation, Leeward has a strong footprint on the economic and workforce footprint of the state. We are still, the second largest educational entity here in the state. And so that means that we do a lot and we could do a lot more. And at a time where we're going to be squeezed, we're probably going to need to put out more. It's one of those equations where, the equal signs a little bit quirky. So with that, I'll come back to some dialogue that we're having on both the academic and non-academic sides with what President Lassner's message indicated. I don't know that we will be able to provide sufficient gratification to some of the questions that have come in because they're very specific. For instance, classes that may not, be at 50% right now in terms of enrollment, classes that may change and what that may do to enrollment. A lot of this is very specific, and I would hope that we create a conduit with our instructional leadership, so our coordinators, chairs, deans, and our VCAA to come up with mechanisms to address this. Some of the changes, if you recall, we planned a really long time for the changes that we are making to our classes for the fall. And it took us a pretty long time to transition all of those classes, the mechanics of, moving students from one class to the other. And then also the communication that we shared with the students who tried to so all of these things are, consideration as we continue to address changes that are happening within the next week or two. And so, one, I want to, apologize for the short timeline in getting all of this done. It is certainly, difficult to deal with it, but I also want to be, I'm grateful for any and all the work and help that you could put forward. We were able to make a pretty big dent, but we still are looking at the possibility of over 1,000 students, just about 1,000 students in terms of real foot traffic on campus any given day. And that's still a pretty high number to manage given the circumstances that we are in. Some of the things that probably went into the announcement that came out from President Lassner are that we are getting more and more frequent instances of fear that may result in more anxiety and even some closures of some spaces because of, possible exposure versus necessarily a confirmed COVID case. We've been dealing with some of those and we haven't yet had the students here. By having a lot of the classes that we're having and a lot of the foot traffic that we're having, we're creating more instances where we may need to close down some classrooms, even lab spaces, so that we could do the disinfecting. And depending on the circumstances, we may not be able to relocate students. And so all of these are reasons why, we should consider what's happening. But again, you need to work with your academic leadership in making some of those decisions so that we can best communicate them. I don't know the details behind it, but we can create opportunities for us to exchange more there. Now, I just want to very briefly review some of the questions that I got through the link just to make sure that I covered most of them. I have, in some instances, responded personally if I got contact information for questions that are very unique. There's one that I do want to shed some light on. There's a question that has been percolating for quite some time now on what we are expecting of classes that have off-campus experiences. And so the interim plan speaks a little bit to it. And we are trying to gather more information because of, you know, waivers and maybe some additional training and what responsibilities we have with our partners on the other side of the equation, whether, you know, it is a healthcare organization where our students may be rotating. I'm being very general here. We're still trying to address some of those. The video that should come out, the training video that should come out from UH should address some of those, but there may be some other nuances that we need to address individually. And I am making some time to address those in conjunction with my leadership team, as well as those faculties involved, so that we are in place there and we can address those. Okay, I think I may have answered the bulk of the questions. If there are some that I've missed, hopefully I have contact information and I could relay some messages. I want to say, so just very briefly, I have asked for an update on the app. The goal is at this point that by the end of this week, they have it out, but I'm not making a promise. That's not up to me. I'm just relaying what I've heard. And so we should have that pretty soon. And the app is a really powerful tool, you guys, because it's a reminder every morning of whether we should come to campus or not. And I'm hopeful that we all, both as supervisors and as faculty members of students, recognize that we don't want to encourage that anyone with symptoms come to campus based on our, you know, policies and or requirements. We want to be a little nimble, because if a student feels the urge to come in because otherwise they will fail, it's an exposure point. And so we need to recognize that. And the app too is going to be telling everyone to please, you know, stay put until we follow up and you're able to be cleared to come back. And so I'll go to the, if there's any questions, please, you know, share in some capacity in the chat box, and I'll try to address those as I see them, but hopefully I'm not missing any. No, I'm just trying to see if there's, I mean, guys, if there are any other questions, you could put them in the chat box. I will say that there are conversations that are happening on the academic side. So I will allow for, you know, my academic leadership that includes the division chairs, deans, and our VCAA and the coordinators, as well as you as a faculty, to have intentional conversations on the classes that are canceled. Just because I'm realizing that it's not just simple numbers that we're using, so it's not a blanket statement, but we have to be at the same time somewhat responsible in the classes that do run in some enrollment capacity. But I agree. I think there was a comment somewhere up there, and I can't follow right now. It's not purely enrollment, but it's one of those strong indicators on whether some classes will run, while recognizing that there are some changes that are happening right now to some classes. I already know of some faculty that are shifting some of their courses and modalities, and that could shift the enrollment a little bit. I don't know if anyone else wants to comment on this, but again, if there are any questions, I'll entertain questions. And yeah, and so as it relates to course caps, we are making, some of these have been flagged to me, and the academic leadership, again, VCAA, deans, and division chairs are going to be working intentionally. I do want to share that it is an expectation that if we have set some social distancing cap on a space, that we don't exceed it. But we also want to work as creatively as we can, like we did through the envisioning and instructional work group, and trying to find ways in which we can try to maintain the class enrollments in a similar capacity to where we were before, but again, respecting the space capacities. You're hearing it from me, and this is being recorded. I am not going to put us in a situation where we are not following to the best of our abilities the CDC guidelines on social distancing and trying to mitigate the spread of the virus. But with that, I do want to encourage anyone that can shift in some capacity to do so. Shifting has a lot of different definitions, you guys. And so it's best, some of the questions that I got initially were very specific to the discipline and I can't speak to it. SLOs are really important. I can't speak to SLOs and disciplines that I'm not familiar with. And so I think that you need to work with your coordinators and your division chairs and your deans and the VCAA to make sure that we are doing right by the student, but also preparing for a potential, okay, the numbers are not going down, so we need to shut down. What do we do in that situation? I guarantee that we'll have instances where courses will need to pause because we just can't move forward. But if we could move a lot, and prepare, not necessarily move today, but prepare for the potential, I'm hopeful that we can move in that direction. And so we are putting out more resources to help address all of this, but we are battling a lot of different challenges, right? And so one is health and safety, which is a priority. The other one is working to maintain some type of sustainable approach to our finances. I think the state has put their position out from very early on how difficult it is. And I don't know that I've gotten an update from the state's position after they extended the shutdown of the quarantine situation through the end of August and now actually into September, because I think that, most public places are still closed until just before Labor Day weekend. Interesting timing to reopen, but that's where we are today. And so the assumptions are that we have more revenue loss for the state, so that could put us in a more vulnerable position. And so we still, again, are waiting on that direction from the state and working out on working whatever we can to reduce our expenditure footprint. And so again, on the class cancellations and on the enrollment management, again, two major things that we're battling, right? One of them is we don't know that our enrollment patterns are following typical years. That's one thing. But the other one is being responsible budgetarily and at the same time being responsive to having our students have their educational opportunities. And so I think that there are a lot of ingredients that make it really difficult. And so there are instances where some classes are at the cusp, and I'll allow the academic leadership to work through those challenges. If there are classes that are really, really grossly under-enrolled, we're going to have a real challenge trying to justify those. But I'm saying that that is something that has to be handled on the academic side, and it's something that, again, it's very difficult for me to see, for instance, that a required course for graduation is not going to be offered, penalizing a student's ability to graduate. And so all of that is something that needs to be addressed. There is still some enrollment potential, but again, we're not seeing we're still down on our continuing population. We're down on a couple of different categories, including early college. And so we will continue to have those conversations, but I don't want to speak on behalf of academic affairs. And I don't want to speak on behalf of any other additional planning that's going to be coming through. I will say that I too, and I have shared this time after time, I do want to see our students getting, the resources and classes necessary for them to carry on. And I don't want to be alarmist or anything like that, but at the same time, we want to maintain our budgetary situation. And so we will have more conversations. You should be hearing from the academic side on any additional planning. There will be probably some shifts that are going to happen in a more specific rather than blanket statement manner, but more on that. Department of Health is a challenge. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm trying to follow the commentaries and whatnot, and I'll do my best to answer them. DOE is, they've made some changes to what they're doing, and like I've said in different occasions, we are impacted. I am having a challenge because I have one of my kids actually starting kindergarten online. And so, I mean, I'm challenged with college students at times starting online courses. And the type of babysitting that is necessary for DOE kids and for those of us that have kids in DOE is a major challenge, and it also creates an impact in what we're doing at the college side because of early college. And so there's just so much that we're juggling. We're trying to do our best. I just hope that you all understand that some of our decisions may not be as timely, or maybe make as much sense at a given time, and we may run around a little bit, but it's because we're getting a lot of unusual variation to what we're typically doing, and we'll continue to address some of these. I do, and I've been here for just over a year, so I've had some patterns that I followed to some capacity. Let's continue, engaging within your channels of communication. A lot of this is coming to me, so I do want to press on that your division chairs, your deans, VCAA have gotten messaging my way over some of the concerns that you're experiencing. Again, no blanket statement solution that I can provide at this time, but your concerns have been coming up. We just have a real modest challenge in addressing all of those in a short period of time. And so with that, and because I am trying to push all of those channels of conversation through your chairs and deans, they are having conversations, I know it. Some of those conversations are difficult. I'm in some of those conversations. I will tell you that there's tension and anxiety from every level. I'm not asking for a pass, but I do want to recognize that it's taking us a little bit of time to address most of these concerns. And in some instances, we're not going to have the nicest of gratifications or solutions. But I will say that we are pressured and we are dealing with it from different places. We're kind of sandwiched in between. Our mission, is very important. Our students are critically important. The health and safety of all of us are critically important. And so with that, I'm going to pause unless there are other questions that others have identified. And if there's anyone that's going to, from my team, yeah. So Kay wants to share a little bit, and I'll pause and wait for any questions that you guys may have.
Hi, everybody. Hope you're doing well. We might have a little echo off of Carlos's computer here. Just want to give you a little history as to how this semester started to progress, because we call this time a new norm, but trust me, there's nothing normal about what has been happening since spring. It has been constantly changing, as you know, looking at the cases per day and what do we do at our school to balance safe and healthy, safety, the health and well-being of our faculty, staff, and students, but also delivering our job, and that is to provide the classes and the educational opportunities for our Leeward community. So with that in mind, just want to give you a quick background on how we proceeded this semester, because in March we already had sort of rolled over our classes thinking everything was fine, and then COVID-19 hit. And once that hit, we knew that the spring semester, the fall semester probably would be affected as well. So from the very beginning, the division chairs worked tirelessly with their secretaries, who are a scheduler of our courses, along with our deans, to create schedules which were smart. So such as if we had multiple classes, we tried not to, in the same modality, we did not have like 4 classes the same, all available, so that they would be all low enrolled and have to choose which one gets cut. Those are strategies that have been implemented for years, and we continue to do that. And your division chairs are very good about being mindful of what needs to be offered in order to matriculate students through your programs. Also, we are always challenged with this new financial situation that we will be facing. It's not just this year, as Carlos said, it could be multiple years that we need to be aware. And so what we do every year will have an impact on the next year. Early on in March, April, we were asked to, hey, take a look at your classes. You have 70% of your classes online, face-to-face. More need to be shifted. At that period of time, we had a humongous shift to online, so much that when the modes of delivery came out from the system to address social distancing, enable to come back to a safe environment, give the opportunity to the faculty to select what mode would be best suited for their classes and by addressing the situation. Okay. We came out right now, we're like 11% face-to-face. Most of our classes are online at over 50%, and the rest are hybrid. So we made those changes when those modalities came out. Thank you for our division chairs, the schedulers, and especially Janelle Sherrill for doing this work, because it was a big, big task. Communication went out to the students, and it's something that we're trying to make sure that we communicate with the students. And sometimes it's hard to communicate with everybody because we don't know the messages ourselves, okay? Because things constantly change. I might be in a meeting and we are given one directive, and then an hour or two later, we get a change. So we're very careful about what we share, but we have been very transparent with our division chairs as to what has been happening. I gave them a timeline. So when we look at our classes, we have a pretty well routine of looking at our classes. Right now, they should have completed, but they're still assessing this, is our first major cut is looking at classes. And I looked at some of the classes are being cut, and they're at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 enrollment. But we're even behind on that because of the situation keeps changing. We had a schedule, but you know what? That went out the door with President Lasner's message on Monday, encouraging people to take another look at online. I know many people interpreted that differently, but from our point of view, it was the faculty need to consider, do you want to go online? Because many did want to change due to the increased numbers of our COVID-19 cases. So we're at a point right now where we're on hold, a little pause, because when President Lasner sent out the message, it trickles down a whole mess of things that need to be taken care of. And the first change that needs to be identified is, how do those changes be made in Banner? What kind of code? There's different ways. Don't ask me how all these work, but Janelle knows. So we are still waiting. We have been asking since Monday, what is the process for making these latest changes? We've asked the division chairs to be having that conversation with their faculty. If anyone wants to change their modes of delivery, they're welcome to do so. But until we get the codes and how to proceed from the system, we are on pause. The minute we get that, then Janelle will be able to assess how we will proceed to make those changes at Leeward. Leeward is the only school that has one person in charge of Banner, a Banner specialist, where other schools have multiple people doing different parts. So we're lucky that Janelle is able to see the whole picture and advise us, and she works really well with our division schedulers or our division secretaries. Once that timeline is given, those codes are given to Janelle, we can create a timeline. It is very important that we communicate that timeline to our students, because right now everyone is on hold. Once we start making those changes, we want our students to be aware of those changes. And when we are finished making those changes, we want our students to be aware of that. Once we finish the changes, we need to give our students some extra days, and we'll have them a timeline and say, all right, we are finished with changing the modalities. We promise they're not going to change anymore, hopefully, and that the students can then make any appropriate changes that they want. It is up to them to make those changes. Then after that, then we're able to assess, where do our class counts lie? Do we need to change? Do we need to close any more classes? Do we need to add any classes? Those kind of changes will be addressed at that time. So the timeline I had originally to do these cuts, because one of the main concerns that we have to keep on remember is our students. We want to offer enough classes for our students so that they can matriculate through their program. But what we also have to consider is people who have registered for these classes, they went through another change probably. We don't want them to have a notice on the first day of school and say, guess what, you don't have a class. It's changed. So we want to make sure that we make any changes, get it out, and give them time to change their schedule, and then we take a look at the numbers. So what I had as original schedule for cutting classes is out the door based upon President Lasner's message, because we need to do things appropriately and give everyone the time to do those. The division chairs, thank you, and program coordinators, thank you for working with the deans this week. I told the deans, you gotta be joined at the hip, so you're gonna have a daily conversation so that we can know what's gonna happen. One of the concerns that came up was from the counseling staff who have worked tirelessly throughout this summer on how they should be addressing questions from students. At this point in time, they didn't even know what classes might be changed, and the students are really anxious just as much as you and I are too. So therefore, we're going to try to come up with a current schedule and work with the deans and division chairs to identify courses that are remaining the same, courses that are changing, and what modality, and try to get that to the counselors prior to us actually making the change. Because the change, depending on how the system wants us to do it, might take a few days to get done, or it might be done very quickly with a code. For those of you concerned about the veteran code, the C19, those have already been instituted, and Janelle will make sure that those are taken care of as needed. So at this time, I just want you to be assured that we are going to give everyone time to, your faculty and lecturers right now, this is the time you should be communicating with your program coordinators and your division chairs if you need to make any changes, okay? I have a meeting today with the vice chancellors. One of my concerns is last March, when we had a stay-at-home order, all our face-to-face hybrid courses no longer could be taught in person. They were suspended. First, we were asked to make a change, which almost everyone did, and we were left with 9 classes face-to-face. And they were finished up after the semester ended, when it was safe for students to come back. But it was a very small group of classes at every campus, and they're usually CTE classes. We had summer in between the 2 semesters. My biggest concern, and I have expressed this concern in our meetings with Vice President Straney and with Associate Vice President Tammy Chun, we had the luxury of that time in between spring and summer to finish courses, to plan for a changeover. We do not have that luxury if we get shut down this semester, because as you know, there's only like 2 or 3 weeks in between the end of the semester of fall and the beginning of spring semester. So those kind of questions have not been answered. We get a daily update if it's available. So once we get the information, I always pass it down to the deans, and the deans pass it down to your division chairs. Thank you to the division chairs. We have been meeting weekly. Usually we have monthly meetings, but so much is going on. In order to get consistent messaging, we have been meeting weekly. And some of those meetings have gone 2 hours and above. So thank you to those division chairs. As we work through all this, we ask for your patience. We're going to try to do things as fast as we can, try to keep our students informed with the messaging that a change will be coming. When changes are made to classes, students are given notice. We will tell them when all our changes are done, and that change you will know too. And then the students will have an opportunity to look at their schedules one last time, make adjustments. So I hope this sort of explains our process a little bit better, especially the curveball that was given to us on Monday. So stay tuned, more information to come, and just take care of yourselves in the meantime. If you have any questions, please go to your division chairs, and we will have a meeting on Thursday with the division chairs. There was a couple of questions that came up through the chat prior, questions that were sent earlier. One had to do with senior citizen program. Although we love our senior citizens, it is at this point in time, we do not feel the campus is closed to the public. So therefore, they will not be able to sign up for any face-to-face or hybrid courses at this time. And we haven't addressed whether or not we will be able to even accommodate them for online classes. If you have concerns about your modes of delivery, I would suggest that you work with your program coordinator and your division chair. And that's it for me, Carlos. Thanks. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
All right, so it's back to me. Thank you, Kay.
Hey, Carlos.
Whoa, yeah, Ron.
Yeah, this is Ron. I just wanted to add that and just say that thank you to our division chairs, unit heads, and faculty in both our credit and non-credit programs, and at our Pro City and Waianae-Moku campuses for their cooperation and understanding the past several months, and particularly this week too. They changed their instructional modalities to fully online or hybrid or modified face-to-face without compromising the student learning outcomes. We asked for a lot, but everyone is pulling together to make it all happen. And, we are sensitive to the cancellation of low enrolled classes because, the registrations are coming up, increasing, but we also have to take a look at what is best as far as the scheduling is concerned. And we are working with our division chairs and program coordinators, this week and also early next week to address this issue. So, but basically, I just wanted to thank everybody for their cooperation because without you guys, we wouldn't make this, be able to make this all happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron. And so with that, I'm gonna begin wrapping it up. Like Ron suggested, everyone's been working really hard, and we really appreciate that. I know that some of us are feeling the pinch because we have to make some decisions that are, extraordinarily difficult to make. But we are all doing it, with our best, with everyone's best interest at heart. We're not trying to do anything, to the detriment of anyone. That being said, things have been changing pretty rapidly, but I have had, I think, in my opinion, the best of experiences that anyone could be having in my seat, and so I'm really grateful to have you guys as, my ohana here at Leeward. I know that everyone's working really hard, and you're all working really well with each other and with the students. And so we'll continue to address these challenges. Again, I do want to note that the concerns that you are presenting to your chairs and coordinators are getting to our ears. So they're not, being ignored. We are dealing with those as best as we can. And we'll have a little bit better closure in some instances and in different outcomes. But I thank everyone for all of your work. I know that we've all been stretched quite a little bit. I think that most of us are losing sleep or haven't slept for a long time. But thank you for your commitment. Thank you for everything that you do. And we'll continue having these conversations. These are not going to go away with the start of the semester. We will continue having these. It's important that we're all informed, and it's important that everyone has a venue to provide any feedback, wherever we could continue addressing some changes. And so with that, thank you all. I appreciate the attendance still. We're still strong. We're moving forward. And another pitch, we have convocation next week. And I hope to see, strong attendance and, hopefully a slightly more positive and event. So thank you. I appreciate your time.